So from your background on this, like you kind of approached it from more of like a Morrowind perspective, or how did you think about like your game design, where you wanted to come from?
I'd say in terms of like other games as references, Fallout New Vegas and Morrowind are the two biggest reference points. Morrowind just for the rich world, the more open-ended gameplay compared to the Oblivion or Skyrim, where you can kill anyone, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then with New Vegas, also the concept of you can kill anyone. You should be able to role play. Role playing is very important in New Vegas.
Right.
You should be able to play in a certain way. If you want to like do it in this way, you should be able to do that. And then just the dialogue system in general is very much like Fallout New Vegas. Hub and spoke design.
Right, hub and spoke. And then also a little bit of the kind of the wiki type of Morrowind a little bit as well. So you have like some hover words and stuff like that.
That is true. Yeah.
And then also I think, have you chosen to go like no voice acting, like completely, just kind of gone for full text?
At the moment, the only way you can hear voices is when you're, barks essentially. So outside of dialogue, you can hear characters say anything. In the demo, it's very light, but we're wanting to add a lot more barks. But yeah, currently there's no voice dialogue. I'd like to add some, we being able to have at the very least like sounds like, huh? When you go through dialogue in some games, it like makes sounds that kind of goes with the dialogue. Having certain characters be voiced would be awesome, but yeah, currently no.
Yeah, like little emotion, little vocal emoticons.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, even your like hellos when the characters greet you adds a lot to the interaction. Like sometimes it's like it's been quiet for a while, and it's even a little surprising when you talk to someone and they're like, "Hi," and you're like,
"Yeah,
they're talking."
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I definitely want to improve, characters. We use the voice pack for the voices in the demo.
Yeah.
So like being able to actually add like actual culture to the voices, and that will help a lot too.
For sure. I mean, now they have there's a bunch of voice acting websites you can just hire voice actors. Like I haven't done it yet. I think I'll probably do it in the next month or two to see how that goes. So it seems like it's reasonable, especially if you found someone who could do like either generic voices for you or like some important characters or something. Then it totally seems like a worthwhile thing to do. Like there's a bunch of people that sound really good on there.
Yeah, that sounds like a good avenue.
Yeah, did you like set up all your dialogue so that you can key it to like audio lines later on, or do you just have it like you could just have like attach a voice file to every single line you wanted to kind of read out?
Right now, having it so like every line could be voiced would be probably impossible because we have dynamic text.
Right.
We have like things where a character might say your name, or have pronouns for the player, or whether it's raining. We have some fun little details that are probably unnecessary, but with dialogue changing. And then there's also a fun secret where if you get drunk, you'll have slurred speech. Like all your options will have slurred speech. If you get a character drunk, which right now I don't think that's possible, but if you could, they'd also have slurred speech.
Okay.
So there's also that's something you gain from having text-based dialogue that you lose with voice-based.
For sure.
Unless you want to have everyone drunk options for every voice line, which is.
Have you seen the ink system, like Inkle? They did like Heaven's Gate and like Around the World in 80 Days and Sorcery. They do kind of like text-based games.
Inkle. Oh, Inkle. Yeah. I thought it's a tool, right?
Yeah, Ink is their authoring tool. It's like Twine or like another.
Heaven's Vault. Yeah.
Yeah, Heaven's Vault. Sorry, I said Heaven's Gate. That's different.
I've seen Heaven's Vault. That's the one I recognize. Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. This guy's also done but there's two main guys who run the studio, and one of them, John, who's the writer, he's done a lot of GDC talks on his Ink system and kind of like how they use it. And like that's really big into dynamic text because everything is text to them. And so like doing lots of little flourishes in the text and adding in like state and stuff. And I decided to go voiced I haven't gotten the voices yet, but I decided to try to go voiced. And so I had to change their system because they have lots of that text variation, text coloring. Like if you do the same thing like 4 or 5 times, it can reuse templates, but then kind of like add in details each time you go. And they have got a little, like a little command syntax so that as it prints it out, it would see that it already did one and then give you the next one and the next one. So very quickly you could write like a concise line of text that would be different 3 times if you suggested it, if you prompted it 3 different times.
That's cool.
Yeah. So. And he's written it
cool.
kind of like a screenplay. So it's like it reads more like a screenplay. And so I took his concept because I thought he had the best concept. He went into like kind of adventures and broke down like a Witcher adventure and just kind of like said like, or quest, and just kind of said like, well, this is kind of the way the quest is. It's like you meet a person, he offers you the quest, you go do the quest, he gives you the reward, you know, and so instead he thought of it more like you want it to be more like an encounter where the world is out there. It could be in any kind of state. So if you go to a place and you see the quest kind of target before you meet the person, that's still a counter and that can go up. And then when you meet the person, you can say, oh, there's this you know, wolf in the woods, and you're like, yeah, I already know, I saw the wolf. And then if you hadn't seen them, then you haven't seen the wolf. Rather than in like The Witcher, if you go there, the wolf just isn't there until the person tells you that you need to pick up the wolf. And so one of those trigger
Ardenfall works the same way.
Yeah. So that trigger.
We don't trigger things.
Yeah, exactly. So he worked that out all in the narrative side, since it's a text adventure. And so I spent a long time figuring out how to move that into like a 3D world where you can walk to a place and not just like a text adventure where they room you to the place. And yeah, it's a nice little concept, and he's got a lot of little flourishes for those text embellishments, if you're interested in that.
Yeah, I just wrote down a note. I'll definitely look into that. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the same system, the concept where it's really rare that we set up some sort of scene like that. And I don't think we've done it yet. I'm sure we will sometimes, but yeah, pretty much always you can complete quests before you're supposed to, and then we have to account for that.
Right.
For sure.
And I think that's one of those rewarding things that people found where they've already gone and done something, and someone tries to give you a quest and you're like, I've already done it, and they're just like, oh, you're amazing.
Oh,
okay. People are like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of rob the player from that if you don't give them that option of like immediately acknowledging they've already done something.
Right. Yeah, and like what like Fallout usually does in that context is they get away with having to really have to check for state by the character will tell you, go get this item, and then it'll kind of leave dialogue. And you can just, well, actually, I think it just goes, you know, it's a hub and spoke. So it goes back to the hub, and then that's where you can immediately say, hey, I have the item. So there's really no extra logic there.
Right.
Because it'd be the same if you had the item or if you returned.
That's right.
You still have that ability to you know, turn it in immediately. So that's one way to like not waste effort.
Sure. Yes, one extra line of dialogue for the writer. You have to write the prompt and the novel response, and if maybe usually I don't think they even give like any kind of special bonus or anything like that. It's just normal bonus, but you don't have to leave and come back. You know, that's the optimization as the player, and you don't think it's broken. You know, because if the player is you already did it, you know you already did it, and they're not acknowledging that you did it, you don't know like, what do I have to do? Just stop the conversation and then talk to him again? And now I've done it.
Yeah, that's weird.
You know?
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah.
So yeah, that's an interesting way. How do you go about structuring like your dialogues in Quest? Do you have like the kind of the chain system where like you just kind of like link one event and then branch off into
Yeah. So we have the concept of topics. So an NPC can have a bunch of topics. From different quests, from different graphs, essentially. You know, graph is just a collection of dialogues. So that allows for like different systems to contribute to an NPC's dialogue. You might have a quest that adds a certain dialogue topic to every male in the world. You know, we haven't done that. That's a bit extreme, but you could do that. Right. That adds a new topic. So that's like so when you start talking to an NPC, they'll open up, you know, the first thing you'll see is the topic hub. After they say their greeting, you'll see a topic hub, which is just a list of multiple choice, right?
Right.
And once you select a topic, then it does the branching. It goes deep, you know, then it goes deeper into that topic, and then you have multiple choice and, you know, whatever down the line. So yeah, it's like you were saying.
Right.
once
And
you pick
then
a topic.
And then that one, that's where it kind of struck me as, well, I guess there's two things that I thought that it reminded me of Morrowind. Morrowind had like the wiki thing where you'd have like highlighted words and you could click on the highlighted word and then go into that topic. And then the other one was that, yeah, it seemed like there was a potential for sharing information between like the players. So like in, for example, like New Vegas or something, I don't think any of the players have like shared dialogue between them. They're all just like that particular character's like dialogue tree.
Right.
But it looked like it might work in your game where there's shared information. So more than one person can talk about a topic. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Like in one conversation, they can switch to another NPC. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I meant like if you talk to two NPCs, they might have the same dialogue information as like sub information in their hub. So like you have their full dialogue hub, and they both subscribe to like, I don't know, information about the forest. And so both of them can tell you about the forest in the same way. Is that kind of how you structured it?
Right now, if that is the case, those are both manually written like separately.
Okay, so they're all unique character.
They're all unique. Yeah, we're not sharing any dialogue at the moment. But when I designed the system, that was one of the intentions, is to allow for that. I think that we've kind of gone the route of we want to make everything feel more unique. So each character would have their own opinion about the forest.
Right.
But I did design that for that as being a possibility, for sure. Yeah.
Right, because that leads into the kind of Codex idea of like you're getting like universal knowledge rather than like perspective knowledge. So it's like if everybody knows the same thing, you know, sometimes that could be useful if they're giving directions and the directions are like general. Relative. You know, you need to go to this town and, you know, find the tavern and it's next to the tavern or something. And it's not like go left from here because that doesn't make sense for more than one person. But yeah, so it's like it's an interesting thing. Like for me, I also went the kind of individual route instead of anyone like sharing dialogue. Every dialogue would be unique. And then of course, if you're gonna voice it, I think there's two tricks for voicing. One is you just remove out the uniqueness. So if you say like a pronoun or you say a name or you say like it's raining, you just leave that part out of the audio. So that they've said most of what you're hearing, but not every single word. So the people who are reading are getting something a little bit richer. It's like a slightly different piece of information. But for people who just want to skip through or don't want to turn the subtitles off, they wouldn't even know, right? So if they had the subtitles off, they'd have no idea that the voice just skipped some of the dialogue to make it more general.
I like that. Yeah,
so that's one trick is just kind of generalize. So you really have two courses and like, you know, for people who are looking at different languages, they're going to be different anyway. So that's the other thing is the internationalization. It's hard to internationalize pronouns because of the placement in syntax. Like you can't like when you do string adjustment templating of any kind, then that just never works. Like in one language, like they're the other way, and in another language, like the suffix or prefix mutates or something. So yeah, that's where it gets tricky. Do you have plans for internationalization stuff as well?
Right now, dialogue, I don't have plans for it just because it's a big game. And there's a lot of, even the demo has, you know, thousands and thousands of lines.
Right.
I forget the number, but a lot of lines. It's a novel. It's a novella. I think it's the size of a novella.
Like 80,000 words.
Beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. But UI, yes. But yeah, dialogue right now, that's just beyond me. And that's like, that's for future me to worry about.
That's a good way to go. Yeah, one other thing I thought of with that is if you do want to do internationalization, you can always just fix one of the kind of you know, where you would template the text. You could just pick one and then that's your template for all internationalization. So you can just kind of like simplify it and then you only have one thing to translate and not try to be tricky about it.
Yeah, I think with internet. I think with that we would just cut all template stuff.
Right.
All of the dynamic text at that point.
Yeah.
Probably.
The other thing you can do is you can go into narrator mode where the narrator just tells you what they're saying. And so that takes out a lot of the personality, but it also removes a lot of the complexity. So it's like you're just simplifying what's going on into something that is a lot easier to translate and would be less words, you know. So if you want people to like, you're going to pay for translation to a language, like, you know, from the business side, it's because you think people in that language are going to give you enough money to make it worth it, like that risk. And so, but translation is like pretty done by the word. So it's, you know, like 5 cents a, not 5 cents a word, but something like that. It's like, and so, like if you can shorten it and still get the point across, and there's obviously going to be cultural gaps anyway, just in the different languages, it's like at least they can follow along. So these are just kind of some of the ideas I've thought of, like that later for my later self as well. Like I went like, because I was going to do audio lines, then every line is tagged with a unique kind of audio ID, and so like just a UUID for every line, and so that way I can always just have a voice or a translator just translate that line exactly, you know, since I'm not doing any text templating to it. But then the other problem is you can't do anything interesting when you want to repeat a line and just make it like emphasis. You can't do anything like that. Like he says the same thing, but this time he's mad or something like that. It's like you just have to have a completely new line. So it does sprawl a little bit more, but it has that easier translation, and then a little easier to sync to voice audio if that comes down the line.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Speaking of, you mentioned narration, and that's also something that we use in Ardenfall with the blue text, where we have narration, and right. I really like that tool. You can't have that, of course, in voiced Fallout, and you know Bethesda doesn't use that, right? But you know. Divinity Original Sin, obviously they use a narrative system.
Well, they had the Ron Perlman lead in and lead out, you know, so there's a little bit of it, but not much.
That's true. That is true. Yes.
Yeah, they're using it only to set the scene, you know, but not do anything more than that. So I mean, there's like Fable did that, right? So Fable had a voiceover narrator, and like there's some places you could use it if you wanted it to seem like it was a story that was unfolding, where you're just like, you find a place and then the narrator just tells you found the place or something like that. So there's like some interesting ways you could use the narrator there, where it's very kind of like hands off, and it's just kind of announcing what's going on in some way, but not too detailed, you know? So I think there's like lots of levels you could use that kind of narration at.
Yeah. And using text in that way is also something that I've been interested in, is the concept of like, you walk into an area and it tells you about that area.
Right.
Because our, you know, obviously since with both of our games, it's low poly, right? It's, you lose the detail.
That's right.
So how do you restore the detail? And our answer is, at least my answer is, through text.
Right.
You know, you walk up to a character and it explains how they have like water dripping down their face because they were, you know, finding pearls, and you know, it explains that, you know, they have algae on them, you know, like, but that's not visual, that's only through text.
Right. And
that's kind of a game because it's free. You can have someone with algae on them by just saying it. Skyrim cannot do that.
Right.
They just can't, it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So that's pretty fun.
Yeah, I found that same thing. I have a little like a LookAtInfo text that I keep about people. And so whenever you look at them, there's kind of like a little dialogue thing that will appear and just kind of gives you like a text line about the person. And I change that all the time. So I have like a default one that just kind of describes like what, because you also like in the way I did the game, when you first talk to someone, it tells you their name and then gives you their dialogue and like a little profile picture of them, which is just a camera pointing at them. And initially you don't know their name. So it's just like, you know, a guard or something. And then when they introduce themselves, that switches the variable into like, now you know their name, but maybe actually you'll get like a pet name for them later on. And so they'll become like, you know, Bucky or something. And so their name can keep evolving as you go.
That's so cool.
I like that. And the same thing I did with the LookAtInfo is like, initially you have like, you know, he's a strong guard, like, you know, doesn't look like he talks a lot or something like that. But then as things can progress, some AI action can cause him to change that default. And I have two ways of doing that. One is it permanently changes. So it's like, it's just moving down the list because maybe he becomes very friendly with you. And so it's like, now when you look at him, he's like, you know, he looks at you like his brother or something like that. And so you can see like, that's how your relationship changed now. But then also there's like a timed one where essentially while a thing is true, if you look at him, there'll be like a counter that goes up. It'll show you like this timed one, like, oh, he's super angry or something like that. And then basically I have a counter, and then when that counter is gone, it stops showing you that. So if you look at him a couple of times, like it'll go back to the normal one. But like for this one, it'll show you that he's upset, you know, for some period of time. And so that way, when you're talking to someone, when you're finished with the conversation and you look at them, which you'll be doing because you're finishing talking with them, you can see however they left the conversation. So like, you know, they're upset at you or something like that. Like now you can see like they're mad, you know, it's like, so you're just getting this, like you're first looking at them and there's some way you have the conversation, and now they're like a different way with that little text update. So yeah, I just thought that was one of the things that I come up with in that same thing of like how to describe things when you're not getting, you know, if you've got the full cinematic 3D artist experience, you can just have the visuals on their face. They're like obviously upset, and you know the camera angles and the lighting is all shifted into like sad mode or something, and so you just know the feeling. But like with a low poly game, yeah, you have to describe it some way, otherwise people just wouldn't know it's there.
Yeah, so for that, do you manually do that for every character? Like, okay.
So yeah. in their character sheet, I first have their initial one, and oh, actually, I've changed that. So the way that I'm doing it now, in their character sheet, for like I've kind of blended the story stuff with the AI all together into kind of like one system. So the dialogue and how they do their actions are now kind of like one system, even though they have a couple different ways of being parsed. But the little block that I have now for their description has like the default at the bottom, and then it has a bunch of things that would override the default. So as you're going through quests, if you're in the middle of like their, you know, their personal quest, if you've completed their personal quest, if like, you know, you're their friend, if they're currently your companion, whatever the things that could be true, there's a bunch of conditions, and periodically it'll just check and then update that as their kind of new info text. And then anytime you talk to them or interact with them in any way, it'll update that. And so through that kind of like little condition check down to the default, I have all of these kind of planned out. So as soon as I have like an actor, I can say for this actor, this would be your progression. So these are essentially your emotional beats. These would be like to your, you know, this character hates you or this character loves you. You know, if you want to do that kind of simplicity, it would work down into like you don't know them and like you're just looking at them for the first time. And so I kind of plan out those emotional beats in this little section, and then I can override those with a timed one where I just say like, okay, right now they're doing this. So like if you're in fighting with someone, like if they're fighting you, they could be like, they're looking at you like they just want to destroy you. You know, they want to, you know, smash you into pieces. And so if you have your weapon drawn, you're not going to see the info box because your weapon is drawn. So that's pointless. But if you don't have your weapon drawn, you'll actually see they're like trying to kill you, you know? So it's like, or you could see they're just playing around. Like, yeah, they're swinging at you, but it's like, oh, they're just playing around. You know, it's like, so that's there. Like I just put that in because that's part of the scene. So I update the AI, and the AI, or the AI updates that little statement, and then for some period of time, that's true. And then because it's a timer, the AI can just keep setting the timer over and over and over again. And then until it runs out or the fight ends and I turn that off, then that just remains true. So if the fight goes on for 5 minutes, it doesn't matter because the timer can only last for 15 seconds, but it just keeps getting set every 2 seconds, you know? So, so that's kind of the idea of using that kind of like a conditional fall down system to figure out where you go, and then an override with the timer.
That's very cool.
I mean, that's what's great about this genre is it's really like, I'm thinking about it like it's a world simulation. You don't want to get in the trap of trying to simulate a world because it never ends and it's not a game. Right. But you are trying to simulate this like world simulation. So if you take like 2 steps back, you can go anywhere. And then it just depends like where do you need to stop for like financial reasons, like there's no way to go down this road, you can't afford it, like there's too much time. And then also you know, capabilities, like, well, there's just no reason to spend time there, or gameplay. But other than that, it's like you can really add in anything, you know. So that's one of the really interesting things to me about this, is that it's such an open platform. And that's why I kind of thought it'd be cool to have one of these discussions, because I don't think many people try this game because it's kind of insane idea to try to make a Bethesda-like game. But I think if there's more information out there, it might not be so crazy, because it used to be crazy for just one person to make a game in a more modern world anyway. or a small group of people.
Right.
And now that's not crazy, it's doable, you know, because the tools have evolved. So I think one of the problems is there's not a lot of understanding of how you would put all these things together. So there's no like blueprint, like for a you know, overhead 2D game, the blueprint exists. It's like not hard to put it together. But for this kind of game, it's like there's a lot of pieces, and just thinking about all of them takes a very long time to just put together, like, what is this? What is this game?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it is crazy, and I still think people shouldn't like, don't try to do what I'm doing.
Yeah. This is one of those things you should recommend against. Only people who won't listen to recommendations.
Exactly. Then it's like, okay, since you're crazy like me,
Right.
you refuse to not listen to me,
Right.
Okay, here's how you should do it, kind of thing.
That's
Like,
right.
Or here's my thoughts on
Right. You should be making like 4 games a year and like seeing which one hits. And then, or 10 games a year and seeing which one hits, or 40 games a year on itch or something and seeing which game hits, and then just pursue that game. That is the correct mode. You know, do as many games, and when people demand that you make a commercial game from your jam, then make the commercial game. Like that's the good advice. The bad advice is, you know, pick one of the biggest games that's ever been made and try to do it with a small team.
It's been 6 years. That's how long I've been working on this so far.
Yeah, well, you're farther than I am because you've got your demo out, and I don't have my demo out yet. But yeah, I started in 2013, so like 9 years ago.
Wow.
Now. No, almost 10, I guess. So, but a lot of that was like part-time, where I was exploring like how to make Unity do things. Like took a while to understand what Unity is. It's like, it's not a game engine. It's like a scene graph, you know. So then figuring out like all the pieces I wanted, and then you know, unfortunately, I went on the hard simulation side of a bunch of stuff. Like I wanted to be able to fly around things, and so then you can't have cities that are locked in. Like your cities are already open, so that's great.
Yeah.
You know, like you could add flying to your game and it wouldn't matter because the cities aren't locked in. Whereas in like a Skyrim type game, you can't do that because they've segmented their cities. But in Morrowind, you could because they were just open. So it's like all of this design, like had to figure out like how I wanted to do that. Same thing with interiors of buildings. Like you've also done the open building design. And
worst mistake ever.
You like it or don't like it?
No, well, no, I like it, but me optimizing it does not like it.
Right.
I shouldn't. It's one of those things where it's like, you know, you don't know how hard it is until you do it. It is a pain.
Yeah.
And it in a way it holds us back, having you know, the interiors be. But I like it, of course. You know, not having loaded space is cool.
Yeah. So I went with that because initially I was planning on every building being like 3 times bigger inside than outside. So, oh, Zoom is telling us it's going to end the meeting in 10 minutes. So I have to upgrade. So we might have to jump out and jump back in again.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
I didn't know that I'm not on the pro plan, but okay. So, originally, I was going to make all the buildings bigger inside than outside because, like, the outside of a building, you don't want to walk around an actual huge building. It's too big, and you can't put a lot of them together. And it makes the building, the cities are either like the size of continents, or like there's only 5 buildings in the city. You know, so I wanted to do it for that reason. Now that I've been putting all the items in the building, I'm making them like 1-to-1 because otherwise there's too many items or there's too much open space. Like how many tables can I put in this room? You know, it's like, or how much like open space would be in this room with 1 table in it. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. So, so I've got that separated system. It does help with the performance for sure, because now all my items, like if I have 1,000 items in some building, it doesn't affect the outside world.
And lights and whatever craziness, NPCs.
Yeah, everything. And like for right now, what I've done is I've kind of standardized all of them, where like everything outside and inside is considered a stage. And so I have buildings and stages, and so like buildings have like an inside and an outside because I'm doing that split, and then there's n stages per building, and so each of them can have triggers around them that like turn things on and off and save them independently. So if you take a book from one area, I don't have to save like everything. I can just save like that one area's state that the book was taken, and also I don't have to spawn all the items until you go into the trigger. So if there's a building that's big enough and you never enter a trigger with the stage, then I don't ever have to spawn any of those buildings or those items, and I can despawn them as soon as you walk away from that area. So it's like like I've at least segmented it off. So there's some benefit to it, but you lose a lot because you can't see in and out. It like disconnects the world a little bit. I've done like one trick where like I can tell what time of day it is, and I update like the lights. There's like a flat polygon, and or like a plane, and I just change the color to make it like you're looking outside, so you can at least see it's nighttime or daytime or something. So there's like little things that I can go in and out for, but you lose a lot of that. So
it is true, yeah. And I'm planning on. There are some locations that have like really big interiors that we're wanting to add. The guild halls, which are going to have a bunch of rooms, a bunch of NPCs, and then some manors, which will be essentially like dungeon manors. Right. Those are locations that I am going to have loading separately, because the guild halls, for example, that's in the biggest city in the game. I don't want to have the biggest city is already going to be a pain to optimize. Try to have 3 massive guild halls. Yeah, so we are going to use.
When you already have the dungeon, so you've got that.
And dungeons load. Yep. Yeah, and that system already exists. Yeah.
What are you using to develop? I didn't look into
Unity.
It. Unity? Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you using different scenes when you load into a dungeon, or like the same scene?
Yes. So essentially how it works is the world is split into hundreds of scenes. I call them cells.
Okay.
So you know, each cell is 150 by 150 units or meters. And yeah, so when you're in the overworld, you have cells in a 3x3 matrix around the player. So, you know, and if they walk, you know, over the boundary of a cell, it will unload the cells behind them and then load the cells. Right. So that's how we have, you know, just the general.
Basically like a half kilometer around the character exists, and they just kind of load it in and out. Yep. Yeah.
And then when you go on and then the overworld is considered there's a map. So there's like the overworld map, and it consists of all these cells. And then there's the interior map, which also has cells that are squares, same exact concept. I just have cells that are like disconnected from each other. So like every other cell, essentially, like a checkerboard. Right. And so it has the exact same loading system. It just, you know, when you're in a dungeon, it can't load the cells next to it because they don't exist. Right. But if you flew out of the dungeon and just flew across, it would load in new dungeons as you go.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I do it, just to make it so. So the gain of that is to know where something is in the world. All I need is a map and a position. Right. So there's no such thing as a dungeon that's overlapping at the, you know, another dungeon. It can't do that. Right. So it makes it really easy to like spawn an object, spawn a character in a cell. How do you do that? Just teleport them to that map and location, 2 values, and they'll go to the right spot.
Yeah, it's a good system.
That's the gain of that.
Yeah, that's a very good system. Yeah, like so I took another like technical turn where I wanted to be able to portal between things. So like use portals and kind of open doors and stuff. And so one of the things I wanted to do was just use one scene. And so like my Unity project is just one scene, and I just basically spawn everything in and out. And the main ones were like the textures, or the terrain just has to be big enough, but the terrain isn't that big of a deal in my system. So I can just leave that in and turn everything on and off. And so the overworld has a terrain, and then the underworld is all just like spawns. So there's just a bunch of pooled objects. So if I have a building that has whatever 10,000 like, you know, things in it, I just spawn all of them, and then and I just cache all that. And so just basically pre-cache all the spawns. So like I have enough objects to spawn that I'm not instantiating anything. And like that's kind of the way that I went about that. So I think I think your method is probably much more scalable from like a uniform manner. And like the way that I did it is I don't recommend it, but it's good for the challenge of being able to have portals. But of course now I don't have portals yet. Like I put them in and then I taken them out because like it's just there's some tricky corner cases around like how to use the portals. I also did like I wanted to not just have like game saves. I wanted to have like full rewind, so you could have like just a button and just like rewind time. Like a scrubber, or just like, you know, hold down the button and go
fully deterministic world, essentially.
But only backwards, not backwards or forwards on your save points. And what would happen is in like the last like 60 seconds there would be certain complete saves, so you'd have every single thing that's around saved completely. And then what would happen is you basically go back through when you last went through a door. So when you went through a door, or like otherwise changed kind of like your state. And so you're not getting like the full save information, but what you're getting is you don't have to really manage saves. You can just kind of scan back and forth. And then I use kind of like the Git system. So it's like it's got like branching, like I know where your parents were. So you can actually like go forward in time and then go back in time, but that's still more forward in time. And then you could go back in time before you went back in time. And like, that's all part of your storyline. So again, I turn that off because there's data complexity that I need to like get worked out before I can make that like a full form feature. So it's like, I got it kind of seeded in the beginning and then put in. But I'm interested to see what it'll, like one of the things I thought of is it just makes like save scumming like a first class feature. So if somebody wants to try to get try all the branches of like a conversation, like in one shot, they can just go through the conversation and then like rewind back and no like extra difficulties. They just go backwards and then forward again. And then the thing that I'm thinking is interesting with that is when you have multiple branching conversations, it becomes impossible. And so like kind of the meta gameplay that I'm looking for to that is kind of showing like when you have like a branching structure and then you have another branching structure and then you have another branching structure, there's literally no way to control time. Like you can't control that. Like you want to as a player, like I'm going to pick the best decision every single time, but actually you can't because too many branches have occurred. And so I'm making that kind of like a storyline that all the players, all the NPCs in the game have this ability. So you're not special as a player. Like, so when you're seeing someone else, you're seeing their best life, essentially. Like when they made mistakes, they went back and they rewound it and fixed it themselves. So like, so you haven't seen anyone who's made the mistakes. And when they do mess up, it's because that was their best they could do, or they've just really given up. You know, so there's like this mental component, and it also doesn't separate the player from the NPCs. So the NPCs are in the exact same state that the player is in, where they'll talk about like going back in time or upgrading their skills because they're literally living in the same world, you know? So they'll have like advice on like how they're progressing themselves, like what they're going to do with like, you know, how they're going to, you know, what their parents wanted them to like specialize in and what they're specializing in. So they're just going through the same dilemma that the player is. And in the same situation, like, you know, people die when they don't want to make any more choices. You know, so when they basically quit the game, like that's when it's over. And so that's how the NPCs also approach life, is that's when they really die, is that they just give up. You know, they don't go back anymore, they don't try to fix anything, and they just kind of let go. And so they're kind of putting so it's kind of breaking the fourth wall a little bit, but rejoining it, that the audience and the cast are in kind of the same situation. So it's a little meta for the game, but I think because I'm doing it for like every single feature of like how the player works and how the characters work, I'm hoping that it doesn't create a disconnect from people, but yeah. So as I was saying, hopefully it doesn't create too much of a schism between the player and the with this kind of thing. But like I figured, I've seen some like cartoon shows. There was this anime called like 12 Kingdoms where they had babies that were born in these like pods. So like the parents just kind of like wished the babies into existence, and like it changed a few things about the world because like how babies were born was different, and it didn't break immersion for me. It didn't feel like, oh, I don't understand what these people are like. So I thought I could try to use something like that where it's like, this is just another world. It runs by these different rules, but everybody's running by the same rules, you and everybody else. So that's my hope, is that it doesn't mess things up too much to like veer off a little bit from how physics and stuff normally works.
Yeah, in Morrowind, there's the concept of, I forget what it's called, but it's basically, you're basically told that by Vivek that he knows you can save scum. And like he knows that he's screwed, and you are able to, like, he could beat you now, but you'd be able to reload the save and eventually kill him. Right. That's like that's actually canon. Yeah. Which is pretty interesting. So it's, you know,
that's interesting because it's like, it is fourth wall breaking, but at the same time, it's really just acknowledging like an ability that like the player has, you know, and that's kind of what I was thinking.
It's in the world. There's a word. It's Chim or Kim.
Okay.
That's what it's called. I forgot. I had to Google it. So it's an actual, like, it's not just meta breaking. There's an actual like word for it, and it's an explanation for it. Like, you're the Nevermarine. So like yeah.
Yeah, that's I think that's a great way. Once you add a word to it, and you put it in the lore and like people mention it before you even find out what it is, you know, then it's just, that's part of the lore, you know, that's just the way the world is. So
yeah.
that's what I'm hoping people, I'm hoping I present it in a way that represents that, but I'm just kind of throwing all these things out. So like everyone can like teleport, so you can do, everyone can do mark and return, and then some people get better at it, and that's how like transport companies work, is they just have people like mark and return back and forth. And so just trying to build up the world based on like these concepts of like, well, I don't want fast travel everywhere, but I do want people not to get like screwed in a dungeon. They can just get out again, or they don't have to make the trip like back. They can go someplace and then just go back and like sell their goods or something like that. And that's a really useful thing. But then like how to extend that out to the world so just everyone can do it. So
yeah, I think that's always really good, because yeah, there's always a certain thing of like, this is a game, this isn't real life, like health bars, you know, or that concept of, you know, and there's always like that kind of level of weirdness where it's like someone's dying of sickness. It's like, why don't you just drink a health potion, right? You know, and it kind of breaks the world sometimes, and sometimes you can embrace it, sometimes you don't. You know, it's always depending on the writer. Yeah, mark and recall was always a weird one to me in games, and just being able, right, like the concept that you can just teleport anywhere. It's like, can everyone do this? Why is this not like talked about? So I like that you thought about that. In my world, we were just talking about this, like me and my team, because I was kind of on the idea of like, there is no such thing as long distance teleportation. But we kind of arrived at a middle ground where there is, it's just really hard. And there's these certain items that can be used. Like a monster, basically these two hearts of a monster, and you can like teleport one to the other, but they wear out over time. So there's lore, and then it's a thing in the world that people know about and talk about. Like there's assassins that are known to like teleport, things like that. So just making it part of the world, but not common enough to like just break everything.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. And tying it to resources is also great. Like whether the resources are timed or not, if the resources are rare enough, then that's a real consideration for the player on when to use them, like when to gather them if they're going to time out, and then when to use them becomes like very strategic, rather than as long as it doesn't become something that's like so difficult that you never want to do it. Like you just, I'm not, or I do it once and it's like, okay, well I did it and I got my Steam achievement and now I'm never doing it again.
Yeah, there's definitely, and that's the classic issue of people like hoarding potions. Like, oh, what if I really need to use this, and then they never use it. Yeah, one thing I'm doing for that is I'm making potions are the only way to heal health. So you can't have magic to heal health, and sleeping doesn't heal health. And so that way, the resources never go out of style, because you have to have them. Like either you buy them or you make them, but you have to have them because healing, like sleeping won't heal you, and no magic will heal you. And so that just like magic is a cheat in that sense, because you're just exchanging stamina, which either auto reheals in most systems. You're just exchanging that. So you're just basically making health as time. So now like stamina regenerates over time, and now I can restore my health. And so I either going to wait or I just go to sleep or whatever. And then health, it's fine. But then you're just in like the Call of Duty thing where you get hit a couple times, you duck behind something, your health comes back, you pop back out. It's like no real difference. Except about how long it takes. I completely agree. I 100% have had the same exact belief. And that's, I have the same system where waiting doesn't, you don't have waiting in the demo, but there is a waiting system, and it doesn't heal health. You have to eat food. Food is slow healing, but heals a lot. Potions is fast healing, but heals a little, something like that. So food is useful when you're outside of battle. You just want to fill out your health bar. And potions are necessary when you're in battle, and you need to get the health back up pretty quickly. And yeah, currently I don't have any spells that can heal. I've considered some possibilities of like the concept of being able to heal in battle, like being able to create like a healing bubble. And if you're in the bubble, then you can get healed slowly. Concepts like that, it would, only if it would like help gameplay, not ruin it, because that could create a cover system on accident, which would be bad. But
yeah, there's some interesting ideas with setting locations, because then you have to like defend the location while trying to heal. So yeah, there's some interesting ideas around that. Yeah, right now what I'm thinking of food as is like one thing I'm thinking about my game is that it's like an economic survival game. So like I don't want it to be like you need to eat or you die. But I do want it to be like, you need to make money or you have story consequences. And so like, for example, there's just taxes everywhere. So wherever you're part of, like they're taxing you, you know? So if you're coming and going in someplace, they're taxing you. If you live someplace, they're taxing you. And so there's kind of there's a survival element that you need to kind of keep paying into the system. Like the first town you go to, they have this giant dome that sits over the city, which also protects you from going outside where I've designed. So I can constrain the design. But the idea is that the dome requires sacrifices of charged items. So essentially you go kill a monster with a sword. Now the sword is like a charged item. I can now sacrifice that item. It becomes like magical energy and I can use that to power the dome. And so the taxes are, you have to like bring a certain amount of magical energy to the dome every week to pay your taxes, to keep the dome running so that the monsters don't come in and like destroy us. Otherwise we can't, because the monsters still come in, but they don't come in so often, you know, so the dome isn't perfect, but the dome gets like 95%. You can sleep at night because of the dome, whereas otherwise the town would be burned down and destroyed. And so that's kind of like the theme. And so then you have this taxes. And then what I'm doing with the food is that the food provides you buffs. And so essentially if you pick what kind of buffs you want based on the kind of food you eat, and then also there's just, you haven't eaten kind of like normal state, which doesn't get the buff. So I'm going like the Valhalla route of like, if you never eat anything, you're base level, but you want to be better than base level. And then the food you're picking chooses your base level, and you can change food every like 3 minutes. So if you want a different buff, it like lasts for 3 minutes and you can't eat inside that time. And then you can switch it. So there's a little bit of tactics in like whatever you just ate is going to stay your buff for a while, but in 3 minutes you can change it, but you can't change it like 5 times. Like you can't just go down a corridor and like eat different foods. Like now I'm fire resistant, now I'm frost resistant, now I'm electricity resistant, you know, by eating different things like in the same corridor. If you wanted to wait, you could, but that's, I think, a disincentive. Like people will just go and deal with it in a different manner. That's my thinking anyway. So we'll see how it turns out and people play the game.
So with your tax systems, is it enforced 100%? Like the player has to do that, or can they not and they get consequences? Or... Yeah,
there's like a legal quests. So if you steal things from people, it starts a legal quest, and so they call for the guards. You can fight the guards or run away or whatever, but that's just more legal quest. And so essentially, at some point you'll be knocked out or something, and you'll end up in jail. And like the magistrate will come and like tell you what you did wrong and like basically penalize you. And so, you know, ultimately what they'll do is they'll take away your stuff. Like if you have a house, they'll take your house, you know, things like this. So it's just basically like quest penalties. So yeah, you don't have to pay your taxes, but then you can't own property, you know, it's like, cause they'll take your property. And so, yeah. And so, especially cause for like some of the quests, you need to own property to start the quest line. You know, you could start the quest line and then you lose your property. Okay. But now you lose all your stuff. Like you want your base, you know, people like having bases and they don't like having things taken away from them. So, and you still get like some leeway. So I'm not making it so like, you know, it's super punishment, but it's like, that would be the ultimate consequence. Like either you pay the penalty, like you beat this guy up and took his stuff. So you have to pay compensation, or you stole something, or you didn't pay your taxes. So you just have to pay compensation, and it's just more payment. And then you could just lose privileges. And then ultimately you could like lose access to a place. Like they just banish you. Like you're not allowed here anymore. Like you're excommunicated.
Like they'll kill you on sight, essentially.
Something like that. Yeah. You're just an enemy. They don't let you in the gates, or every time you come in, they just throw you out. So it depends on like how they want to treat you. But that would be the idea, is that I just put you into a legal quest. And like now you're just going through this legal quest of however I work that out. Like one thing I'm doing with the demo is I'm introducing you to a rival who's also like your companion. They just force this, like you both just started today in this new town as like new recruits, and they're just forcing you to work together, and like you don't get along, or he doesn't get along with you. So whatever you do, he's going to be annoyed at you. And like, and basically it's like, you're probably going to be better than him at everything. And so he's just mad that he's like the second fiddle. And so, but if you steal things, you both get blamed. And so he gets the blame as well. And so it doesn't matter whether he stole something or you stole something, you're responsible for each other as like the buddy pair. And so that kind of like gets to add in kind of all little bits of drama. He just kind of waits around looking for you to do things, and like, you know, like tells you not to and stuff like that. And you can ditch him and he doesn't always stay around, but it's like, it's a fairly loose companion system, but it's like that kind of Fallout New Vegas companion system where they follow you around, but it's not 100%. Like they can go do other things and they don't sleep next to you and that kind of stuff. But he'll seek you out again and find you like the next day. So if you're someplace, he'll show up again and then start watching you, and you'll fight together. And then the idea is, of course, eventually you can form a better relationship with this person or not, but that kind of aids the legal system, because I need someone to be able to like blame you for things. And then, and I need the legal system to not just be like the original Daggerfall system was great. There's nothing to it exactly. It's like you're just called in front of the judge and they go through all the process. And it's amazing that they made all that stuff, but it didn't have any emotional impact. So it was like a good system. Simple. But no emotional impact. And so like in my game, I want everything to have some kind of emotional impact, like a reason to care. And so just tying you to this other person, well, now you're impacting them every time you steal something and they hate you for it because they're in jail with you. And so it's like that makes this kind of emotional deal,
Right. So one thing I'm curious about is you were talking about how this NPC can just run off and do stuff, come back and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How do you deal with like navigation and combine the complications of navigation and just having NPCs, spawn in, run towards you, all that kind of complications?
Yeah. So there's a complicated topic for sure. So I have 2 layers of navigation from just the pathfinding. The first one is just Unity navmesh. I've tried a bunch of things. Well, we could say there's 3, but like we'll just start at 2. So the first one is Unity navmesh, just get from point A to point B in a visible area, right? That I know what this is. And so if you're in that map in your parlance, like if they're in like a dungeon, but I'm in the main world, like I can still have them navigate, but I don't need to use the navmesh anymore. I just basically run a time thing. I just do like, okay, this distance to this distance, and I just lerp them across the distance, and then I'm kind of keeping time. And I do that a little loose because you're not looking at them, so I don't care.
Right, totally.
Yeah, it's close enough. And so, and I'm kind of always running all the characters in the game, but like at a slow pace. So I update their AI slowly. That way, if they have a different schedule, they're essentially where they should be when you show up. Like if they're supposed to sleep in the daytime and you show up at their bed, they should be there sleeping. And so they would have calculated that at some time before and just put them in that area, in that position, and then not changed until you got there. And so there's the navmesh area. Then I have roads, which are just kind of like just spline points, basically, like blind spline points. And I will try, if you're going a far distance, I will first nav you to the road and then walk the road. And so that's just like, following the path. And then locally, I have like local avoidance steering just to get people to like not wedge into each other and to like push away a little bit.
Right.
So there's that kind. And then I chain every building, like my system is buildings for interiors and exteriors. And inside a building, you can actually link from building to building to building internally, like that's no problem. And so I know all of those chains. So I know the door is here in this position, and I know it links, there's another door in this one. So I can also graph search my way through that. So there's kind of like those levels of how I'm doing the navigation. And then, like I said, I'm running that calculation all the time. And when you're not looking at the player, I just absolutely cheat. I just move them to wherever they need to be. If they're stuck, I just pop them someplace else. And literally, I just do a screen test in the frustrum, and I go about 20% outside the frustrum. And so when you've moved outside that, if there was a guy and he wasn't navigating, like when you look back, he's now in the place like he wanted to be, using the navmesh path. So it doesn't put him inside of an obstacle, because I'm still using the navmesh path. I still did the navmesh, but for some reason he got stuck on some terrain topology. But now that you're not looking at him, now he's over there. And so, so those are the kind of systems that I used. And so that way, like I can always be sure that the companion can go do something else at nighttime. Like he wants to go sleep, so he goes off and sleeps. And then when you've gone into some mine, I just teleport him like right near you, and then he walks up to you. And so you don't see him spawn in, but he came from a direction, and you heard the footsteps and stuff because he came close enough to you to start relaying all that information. And so that's kind of how I'm doing.
So you teleported, yeah. In the case of him teleporting in the dungeon, will you just teleport him like close enough where he could path to you?
That's
but
correct.
Not like, right behind you, basically.
I'd put him at the door, basically. I'd put him at the door
okay.
and I'd start lerping him until he got into that range. Because I don't just use screen frustrum, because otherwise, if I look at you and then I turn in 360, you might be gone. I use screen frustrum plus a minimum distance of like 7 units or something. And so that way, if you're stuck on topology, but you're right next to me, you're still stuck on topology when I turn around because you're right next to me. Like maybe I jammed you in there on purpose. Like I actually pushed you in the corner. I don't want that person disappearing out and like now being on my other side, like rushing me or something. So, so if they're far enough away, and so that's how I did it. So he's just far enough away and then outside of frustrum. So then he just comes in and I lerp him until he's in that category. So either he's close enough to me and I'm not looking at him and then he gets actually spawned in, or I rotate and he goes into the frustrum and then I spawn him in that way. And since it's off the screen from the frustrum, you don't see him when he spawns in, so it's okay. And then I also use the basic stuff, but I use the animation to not start at the beginning of the animation. So you just need to move into the middle of the animation and not just start at the beginning. Otherwise, everybody looks the same too frequently, and then spin and they're all doing the same thing. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because that system you just explained is basically identical to what I originally wanted to do. The splines on the roads, the navigation, the graph with interiors mapping to each other to, so you know how to get from one spot to another. Lerping over time, like literally like exactly the same. I didn't end up doing any of that. NPCs actually can't leave interiors right now. I'm going to be adding the graph searching because that's required.
Well, I would recommend what you did is the better way to go because it took me months to do that. And that's months of, spent time, so I think having the game and adding the features is a lot better than not having the game and having a bunch of features that aren't a game, so that's what I learned. Yeah, that's what I realized. I think what you did is better. Like sometimes I feel like there's no way I could have gotten all the features I have if I hadn't built it the way that I did, like, because I went for big features. But the real risk is that you just never have anything, so like having something and building from it is a much better idea than having a bunch of features that don't fit together and make a game. So it's been risky. I think there's definitely a middle ground. Yeah. It's been risky, but I've also had some crazy systems. So I understand. What's the crazy system that you built?
Craziest system I've built?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, the whole quest and dialogue system there's hundreds of nodes, custom nodes that could be created. I guess it's the craziest system. Just the fact that you can, this is not crazy compared to yours, because your system, you can simulate all characters at once and all that kind of stuff, which is cooler. But just the concept of, having every NPC, I can access any of them and alter them and teleport them in and all that kind of stuff. I'd say that's crazy. But
I don't think it would be hard to add that to your game. Like it's just
no, it would.
The main thing would be you just have to have a reason to do it, right? Like right now, it seems like they're where they should be, so it's not necessary, So it's like when you have that reason, then I think it would be easy to add. That's one of the things that I thought, like having like a design for these kind of games, like more spelled out, would be useful to people because they could see what they could implement first and what they could implement later. Whereas like when you don't know, you spend a lot of time.
Like for me, what I learned, because one big reason why I have like multiple scenes, all the different chunks, is because I have level designers. I don't like. Do you have a team or
just me?
Okay, that's what it felt like. So in this case I had a team, and multiple people to be working on different parts of the world. So that's naturally, if you have that, then now you have to do a lot more work.
That's an almost impossibility to like do merge conflicts with, merge conflicts with topology or merge conflicts with, game object state, but if they own a scene and they only trade the scene when the scene is checked in, like the scene is locked, like that's a great way to do it. And if the scenes are 150, meters, that's a reasonable size that anyone could work on and just say like, this is mine until I let it go. And then somebody else can work on it later on.
Currently, we don't have a locking system. We basically just say, "Hey,
I mean, by trust. Trust is fine.
But I've looked into the possibilities of having a server somewhere. But someday maybe. if the team
I
gets
mean,
big
a chat channel is good enough, you know, for now.
It works for now. Yeah,
Yeah.
for now it's fine. We've had some issues, you know, every once in a while, oops.
Yeah.
But and sometimes a merge actually works. It's like, oh, cool. Kind of just let it work. You're like, I hope it worked. I hope it didn't screw any weird, you know, game object somewhere. But yeah.
Yeah, one thing I've been doing more recently, and I don't know, I think I can recommend this, is basically moving more of my data out into my own format, out of Unity's format, so that I can spawn things and stuff like that. I use YAML for most of my stuff, just because I can then read it, but it's like, it doesn't really matter. And it's not a real YAML. I made like a fake YAML parser that's just faster and doesn't have references and stuff. And so, one of the benefits I get from that is that I can check it into GitHub. So like all those files get checked into GitHub. I can see what changed in them. Sometimes it's massive amounts of things that you're not going to really read over because it's just a dump of like items or something. But it's like, but you could fix it. And then I respawn everything from that. And then what I'll do is I'll go out into the world, I'll pull all the items out of the game objects, dump them into these files, and then I can reverse that and respawn all the items. And so that could be useful, not as necessarily like a proactive game tool, but as like a reactive, like fix problems that you got yourself into. And so depending on like whether you have those kind of problems, I was having them with the base building because I wanted you to be able to like, I wanted all the buildings to basically be constructed so that you could do things with them, like expand them and stuff like that. And so the real problem I had with that was doors, because the doors could be in different positions. You could move a door and it's not in the same position it was before. And then the door despawns, so it literally doesn't exist anymore. And so I went through like many different iterations until I finally finalized on like 2 doors that don't have to be in the real world, but could be, but are like phantom doors. And so these are the real structures that will always stay here. And then the spawn structures will just like use those. And so then you have like this permanent game structure that you're not despawning and spawning and moving all the time. And they're linked together and they never change. And then you have all the spawning stuff that happens around them. And so like that kind of thing of like extracting the data from Unity, storing it in a format that I can check into GitHub and then pull back out to fix. That's worked well for me. And then it also got past that spawning issue for me when there were like ephemeral things that could like, they could change and then now they don't link up anymore. Like that, I spent way too long on that. It was probably 6 or 7 or 8 weeks over a year trying to fight those door problems. Like not like the normal door problems where just like people
not the normal
or something.
Ones, the AI.
Right.
The AI door problems.
Yeah, that one I haven't had a problem with yet.
Me neither.
Yeah. So
since my game is not realistic, NPCs just get close to a door and the door opens and then they walk through and the door closes. Like
right.
I
have physics doors inside the
care.
buildings, so we'll see how that works. They're just like they're just hinge doors. But I just consider them to be non-target, so the AI should just walk through them. And so they're just excluded from the nav mesh. And so the AI should just push through them. Of course, you could put a box there or something. That's one of the reasons I've deferred the the base building, is that you could easily just put a box in front of a door and now the NPCs can't get through the door. And like and maybe you can't get through the door either. And so now everything is messed up. So I'm just kind of deferring some of those features. They're really neat features, but they're just a Pandora's box of like, this game is not going to work for people, and then they don't get to see anything. Like,
Yep.
Totally, write 100 quests and they can't see one because some door gets wedged with a crate.
Locked doors are fun.
Yep.
Like the ability for a door to be locked sometimes and not.
I 2 ways of that. I have keys, which are just like a UUID. So there's just some integer on a key and it just says this will open the door. And then I have like a story state. So like if the story condition is true, then the door could also be locked. And that way, one thing I did, which is kind of fun, is that you can talk to people by just walking up to them, but you can also talk to people through their doors. So if they're in the house and you like have a locked door, instead it just like knocks on the door, and then you have the conversation like you would with the person, but you're just looking at the door. And I hadn't seen that before, but that was a fun little discovery. And then that way they can tell you to like go away, and you can like gain their trust and like, run errands for them or do whatever to like try to gain their trust before they open the door. So you don't even know what this person looks like. You're just dealing with a locked door, initially.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then that seeds a mystery. Like, who is this person? I think the locked door is a good mechanic that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, in my case, since doors can be locked at any time, how do you have NPCs decide like, or be able to walk through doors and all that kind of stuff? Like,
Right.
So yeah, I have to have the concept of like, if the door's locked, then it blocks. NPCs can't unlock doors. Is my current rule.
Okay.
Because how would you do that? If it blocks navmesh, the NPC would never decide to get to the door.
Right.
And since at least I'm using A-Star Pathfinding project.
Right. Yeah, I use that too.
Than Unity. Oh, okay. Yeah. But you don't really have the concept of like this NPC specifically can path through this specific door, but this NPC can't because they don't have a key. That's just not a thing.
Right.
So yeah, my solution is NPCs can unlock doors.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Simple as that. And then it's like I'm going to be adding a system where at nighttime NPCs will lock their own doors.
You know what you could use? You could use the navmesh obstacle. If you're still using navmesh with A-Star, the navmesh obstacle will create like that temporary obstacle, and you can just turn that on or off whether the door is unlocked or locked.
Yes, yeah, and I use something similar. I use navmesh cutting.
Okay.
That allows for the dynamic unlocking and locking, but I don't have but that doesn't solve the problem of NPCs being able to unlock doors.
No, yeah, that would
like,
just
like walk up to the door and open it. So how it works is, my plan is for NPCs to be able to lock their doors at night.
Right.
Is it'll just magically lock. It's nighttime. They'll walk into the room, lock the door behind them automatically. I realized that what if the player's inside the house at the time? They just locked in. Yeah. I realized, okay, you can open the door from the inside. So I had to create a concept of like an inside of a door and an outside, just so they can get out if the door's locked. But yeah, the concept is NPCs walking inside, the door automatically locks, and then when they wake up in the morning, the door automatically unlocks. So then they're able to path out. So
yeah, I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, it's funny. Like it's always that balance between like, will players even care? No, most of I've realized more and more, and it's just, I feel like there's the programmer's ego where we want to we want to make it cool, right? We want to make cool systems.
That's right.
We want to talk about it because it's fun and show off. And to an extent, that's great. That's awesome. But there is a point where it becomes kind of toxic, where you want the programming to be cool more than you want the game to be fun.
That's right. That's like the question: who are you making the game for, you or the player?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you want to make a game for yourself, that's fine. Embrace it. Sure. Yeah. Some people do that, and that's reasonable. But in my case, since I want to make this game come out, I have to eat my own ego sometimes and just decide, no, I'm going to calm the system down and just make it work. And later I'll add this feature, right? Add it to the big pile, and that makes it feel a little better. That's
the correct way to approach all software development and games specifically, because they're so laden with extra things. Like if you're making like a website, it doesn't matter what images you have or what, it's not a big deal. Like the website is the website, but it's like, if you're making a game, they're all based on assets. The assets all have like properties to them that people have expectations for. If you're trying to live out what all those expectations are, like what a doorknob is, and whether you use the doorknob, and whether the door is locked and you have to put a key in the door. It's there's so many little things that could come up, and they're just not going to make the game better. So that I think is always and I feel like I've definitely gone too far in some things, but I feel like at least I was trying to do it from the perspective of base building is fun, and being able to customize a place, own a place, customize a place, make changes to the place, and even expand a town, that would be a really cool thing in a Bethesda game. So that
to me, that's very much not programmer's ego at all. That's I want to make a cool feature. Maybe it's too big of a feature, but I want to make a cool feature for players. Now I want to solve this cool programming puzzle.
Base building actually isn't a hard programming puzzle. It's the implementation and with all the details that makes it hard. It's not building a tile set or
time.
It's either you're doing a snapping system or a grid system. I just went with a grid tile system because I thought it would be there's so many snapping systems out now that I feel like players would be bored of another snapping system where just things snap together, and it's cool, but it's it limits you in a bunch of ways and it's slow. And so I just went the grid method, where you just have tiles and you can literally just draw out things. And so I can draw a big map in like 30 seconds, like, and has a bunch of different rooms in it, and like, you know, like overpasses and different levels and stuff.
Is a tile system like 2D? Like
It's a 3D tile system. So it's like it's
Okay.
a 2D tile system, but there's layers. So
Right.
basically you have an infinite X, Y, Z system, and all the tiles are of a certain size. So like 5 by 5 or 2.5 by 2.5 or something like that. And so, and then the way I've done it, because I don't control the assets, I've just set in this map, we use this tile set, which is 5 by 5. And this other map uses a 3 by 3. And so that way I can use any kind of assets I want. And if I want them to connect together, I just make 2 buildings and put them together with a door. And so I can go from a 5 by 5 to a 3 by 3 without a problem. And if I really wanted to cheat, I could use my, I have a couple different systems. I have a spawn system where I just like have something tagged. And so every item that's there is just tagged as being in that spot. And so instead of it being like a tile-based system, which I cache, I just have a spawn system of like, I put all these things here, so just take them away and put them back. And so I could just take the building and take like a 5 by 5 and put it in a 3 by 3 by just using the spawn system. So there's like a couple ways of doing it in my system. It's a little loose, but that allows me to use assets that aren't uniform, you know, and that's the problem that I've had because I'm not creating my own art. I just have to use what's there. And so whatever they have as their sizing, I just roll with that. But yeah, but it's a trick to like not over design things. And so even from that perspective of base building, I could have done it much simpler. I could have like, you know, tried to go a simpler route and then expanded it later. And that would have been, again, the right move. Because if you spend 3 months or 4 months doing something, especially full time, like that's a lot of time that could have been put to making the game actually get out versus working on a feature that will be of interest to some people for some portion of the game. So it's like,
right.
So that's the thing. It's like, yeah. So there's I can't say it's totally unego because I want this feature, but I do think it's a cool game feature, and it's one of those things that like, and that's what inspired me about the Bethesda likes. Now I'm calling them scrolls like. I don't know if that'll take off or not, but it's like Souls like. But yeah, people say Souls like all the time, so having a scrolls like, you know,
yeah, I like it.
rolls off the tongue a little bit. Bethesda like is more obvious, but maybe they sue you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's been on my mind a little bit.
Yeah, I figure when you're small,
but
you can get away with
on
it.
Twitter.
Yeah, but if you ever start
Twitter
to become a thing, then Microsoft lawyers decide that they need to earn their pay.
Yeah.
They're getting paid anyway. They might as well sue you. So, but yeah, the scrolls like idea, it's like that platform just lends itself to like everything. Like you could make like a NASCAR racing game, but it's a Bethesda scrolls like game. You know, it's like that
first
format.
person.
Just yeah, it could be anything. But of course, I like the fantasy genre, and I like, you know, what they normally are. But they work well as like the post-apocalyptic games, you know, like Fallout. It's like that same pattern.
And now there's going to be a Starfield.
Yep, the Starfield. They'll have the space version, and like so, I really do think that the pattern is amenable to like all kinds of gameplay. But it's just a difficult pattern to make, you know, and it's not well understood. And I don't think a lot of people have gone into the details of like for example, how do you do your like day-night cycle, like your time system? How do you handle that?
How do I handle that?
So like I played your demo, but like I didn't see the time change, so I didn't know if
oh yeah, no, there's absolutely a day and night cycle. I mean, so time moves forward, you know, they have a date and they have a time of day. So that just moves the world forward. Certain monsters will spawn day and night depending, you know. That alone is just a simple system, you know, just really just affects that, you know, the sky. The weather system will be affected by the time of day, of course. And then AI is affected by time of day. You know, they have a schedule system, so they use, you know, the time of day for a reference there.
Right.
You know, whether they should sleep, whether they should do, you know, go to the bar, you know, whatever they need to do.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty simple system. Yeah, but you know, quests could hook into it. Sometimes quests do hook into it, like, and I do that by, you know, if an NPC has to do something like, oh, someone's been stealing my grain, go find them, right? Like, go watch this granary at night, and then someone will, you know, appear. You know, those basically, that's an example where that's an example of, we were talking about how I spawn things in. I usually don't do that. At first, I didn't. The idea was that he would, come from his home and walk all the way to the granary.
Right.
That wasn't fun. It didn't work.
Right.
And I just basically I removed the quest. I disabled it for the demo because it's like it didn't work. And then only recently I realized, you know what? I'll just fake it. I'll just teleport him, a spot off camera. Right. No one will know, and it'll be better because you'll get that instant feedback of like because the problem is he was getting stuck on things, all that kind of stuff. You totally get it. So that's just an example of where I realized spawning.
Yeah, I think that's a really good system. I think the cheating for spawning is the right move because like when I go into a building, I want to see people in an interesting place. I don't want to see everybody walking from the outside edges into the building and then getting into an interesting place. It's like I've already left. It's like I want to come in.
Skyrim does that.
Scene.
Skyrim, I think, does that.
They do it sometimes. Like when you wait, then everyone will.
When you wait, everyone walks.
Yeah, everyone walks. But if you just show up, everyone's in the right place. Like when you enter Whiterun,
do that.
Everyone is in the place that they should be. Like the smith is leaning against the wall. The annoying guy is walking down the street towards you. The red guard guys are off to the side. Yeah, the highlight.
Yeah.
Have you been to the place 20 feet away from us? You wouldn't be the kind of person who would walk to the Cloud Top district.
I think originally the Cloud district was supposed to be like way bigger and like farther away. I think that was the reason.
It doesn't make a lot of sense that there's just two staircases like separating this. It's like, you wouldn't be the kind of person who would walk over there.
But and I do the same trick there, where if you walk into an area, NPCs will basically snap. If you're not looking at the area they're going to be, which you basically never are, and you're not looking where they are, then they'll just snap to wherever location they have to be.
Right.
One thing that could technically happen with my system is if an NPC is like, away from their bed far enough that they're despawned, and you go to their bed, they won't be there because they don't exist, right? Then that's one negative of having the AI, be loaded. An NPC's AI is loaded in when they're loaded in. So if they don't exist, they can't snap because they don't exist. Right. Well, your system has, that's a thing that works out of the box. Right. I have considered I've thought about, I can make the schedule system. I could easily make it work offline. And then, but the thing is like, that's the thing I pushed to later, and I haven't run into an issue. Like, why would an NPC be that far away? Right. The cities aren't gigantic. Right. And big deal if, I've just learned to keep NPCs. I've run into some issues with that. I just don't make NPCs travel very far. Right. Those are good solutions. The entire city. Yeah. And I've kind of realized, what? I'm good with that. That's good enough. If it became like a really big deal, then I would add the schedule system. But for now, it works. It works well enough.
I think those are the right decisions to me because if you're not running into the problem, then there's nothing to solve. It's like it goes back to the again. Oh yeah, we're less than a minute. All right, well we'll reset in a second, but as they say, it's like it looks right, it is right. That's the gaming motto. It's like you can't tell, like the information isn't there to the player. All right, well let's disconnect and then. Okay, round 3. So one thing that is a big thing in these games is like items. So items exist in the world. You can drop items so they don't exist in the world, and then you put them back into the world. In some games, how did you kind of approach that in your game?
Yeah, so items have 2 components, and this is actually bad programming. Every item, if you have an inventory and you have 100 arrows, you're gonna have 100 instances. Oh wow! Now it won't have 100 pieces of data. The arrow with all the information about the arrow is its own. It's just a scriptable asset, and it's like an asset. It's not instance. But there is a class for every single one, and that is terrible programming. But it's worked so far. So it's one of those things where it's like, if I look at it, I feel sick. But it works so far, so I'm not gonna touch it. But yeah, so when you have an inventory, it's an inventory of items. If you drop it, then it will become an actual game object with a component that will actually save in the scene. So once you drop it, you can leave the scene and it will save, unload, and it's gone. Yep. And I don't have the concept of like item instance IDs or anything like that. So there's no way to like track a certain item ID. So I can't like have an NPC give me an item or like know where a certain item is in the world. Like that's just not a thing.
Right.
Instead, if we ever need to have it be like, a unique sword, and you need to track that, like when it's added to your inventory, we just create a new, parent. I have like a scriptable object variant system, kind of like prevent variants. So I just create a variant of a sword and just call it like, quest sword. And then you can track with that.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, I mean, I think
How
that's.
do you do with yours?
I'm on like the 6th iteration now, so I've mutated it a bunch. One of the final way that I've got it now is I wanted to have a stackable system because there's just going to be a lot of loot in the game, and so originally I kind of went your direction where everything was unique because I wanted to track unique things about them, but I ended up with all this data that mostly was all default. Like no one's doing anything to this thing. One thing I wanted to do with these weapons is, like I said, you have this tax where you're charged. Basically, you have to sacrifice items for the tax. And so when you're attacking people, you're building up a charge on the item. And so what I was going to do is put this charge on the actual item. And so instead, what I've done now is like, if you have like 50 swords, the charge goes to the last sword. So all the charge, like if you have a bunch of stacked swords and you put them on, all the charge falls to the last sword, and every sword you drop is just uncharged, totally unique, or just generic sword until the last one. And now the last one has the unique data associated with it, and that data is just like a I'm just calling them like boosters. So it just has like a booster for XP. It could also have a booster for fire or a booster for electricity or something like that if I wanted to make like a special thing. But that only exists in your character or in the world. So if it's like the item itself doesn't have the information, but when I put the item in the world, how I track the item in the world, now it has this boost. And if I pick it up, I take the boost with me for that one item. So I'm doing something kind of that's like a hybrid. And again, like as a programmer, I don't like it because it's not perfect. It's not uniquely put out. But as a player, I don't think it will be a problem. And there's even some gameplay things where you can basically, it's like what you used to do in New Vegas, where you would stack repairs. You would have a whole bunch of items to repair, and you'd have a bunch of broken things. You just like dunk, 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 and they all disappear, and you get one good one. So it's kind of like that, where you can kind of build up charge on like a bunch of little weapons. And then I've kind of gameplayed that a little bit, where the first time you kill an enemy, you get a bigger charge on that weapon than every other time when you kill an enemy. So just running along with brand new swords and like whacking people with them will give you more charge than if you have the same sword. And so one of the strategies of paying your taxes, and that everyone will do, is they just get a bunch of these iron swords and just go whack people with them, and then they turn them in for their taxes. And so so they're just building up charge, but they're constantly taking out like a new sword and then attacking people with it. And there'll just be like a mode for that, where like every time you attack, once you're done killing someone, you just draw a new sword, and then you charge that sword. And so it's just kind of like a passive thing. It makes there's a period of time where you could be attacked while that's happening, because you're just auto changing out your weapon. You're basically equipping and unequipping, but you're getting all this charge out of it. So it makes you a little bit more dangerous when you're fighting. Every time you kill something, you get this bonus, and now you have to run away a little bit, and then you can go back and fight. Or if the fight is more serious, just turn that passive off, and then you're one way or the other. So that's kind of like how I've done that. We'll see how it turns out. I don't think it'll be a problem, because I think it's one of those things that players will just get used to, as long as the system isn't broken against them. Like if it's not like stealing things from them, like they had something good and you've taken it away from them, like that would be a problem. But as long as they don't feel like that's the case, that's good. And then this way it allows me to stack arrows. So if you have 250 arrows, and then what I'm doing in my game is that like everything that's small can be picked up. So you can just loot rooms completely so they look ridiculous. So they only have like large furniture in them. And I don't know how that'll turn out.
I'm wanting to do that.
Yeah, I don't know how that'll turn out.
I don't have enough junk.
Yeah. It works great in Fallout because it makes sense to strip everything from a room, but in a fantasy system, it doesn't really make sense that you come in and you just strip a castle blind, and like it's
players are allowed to do things that don't make sense.
Yeah,
right? And you could just say, well, don't do it. Right? If players think it's weird, then they just wouldn't do it.
Well, it's not that it's weird. It's that when they come back, the place looks ugly because now everything is gone. Wow. Like it was decorated and had all these nice little things, and you've gone and stolen everything. And so you come back into this place, and now it's like very barren. Like you've just got some tables around and some bookshelves and some rugs, and like everything else has been stolen.
I think that's more of a feature than than a negative. I don't know. It's the
Right.
player can steal everything. I mean, you know, and in worst case, I mean, you know, the solution is make it so NPCs get mad at you if you steal stuff.
Well, that's where the legal quest kicks in. So there'll be a legal
yeah, exactly.
quest.
So there's still like, it feels like just a good system of consequences.
Right. And the other thing is I can't have them slowly replace the items. So I have the current save of a stage, like a building stage, and then I have the initial one. So I could in later times go and add it so that slowly they'll just go and like place items back where they used to be.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, so like maybe if you pay them the money, like some of the items show back up or something like that. There's like, and that's again, like, luckily I left that to the future and didn't try to get that done now. But yeah, that's one of those things that like definitely it's cool when you go into a room, you just take everything, you know, so it's fun to just do. And what I thought of is actually like initially I thought of not doing that because like in Morrowind they didn't do that. You could take some things, but a lot of things were locked. It was a mix. You know, same with Skyrim.
Yeah, I'll be doing a mix.
Yeah.
I want more junk, but I'll be doing a mix myself.
Yeah, and so in those games, like they mixed it, but the thing that's cool about it is that it's essentially like low pressure first person shooter. You look at an item and you click on the item and it's just like shooting an enemy, like a headshot, but it's low pressure, right? You don't have time. You're just like looking around. And one of the other things I did was turn off weight capacity. So you can pick up an infinite number of items, whatever you're wearing, that's your weight capacity. So you can still be affected by gear you're wielding and wearing, but your pockets are an infinite dimension of stuff.
That's a cool way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also that has some implications for pickpocketing as well. So like one thing I'm doing is you can't pick doors. Like no locks can be picked in the game. So so those are hard gates because I thought about the Bethesda system there, and essentially unless the door is gated by a story element, if it's just a lock pick, then essentially it's just a time delay. They're just saying waste a little bit of time and you can get in here. And so I thought instead I'll change that to a narrative concept that if it's locked, there's a narrative reason why it's locked. And so now you have to go perform a quest or meet someone or have them let you into the room. And now it has a purpose, right? If you find a chest and you can't move the chest and you can't open the chest, now you have a reason to like come back for this chest. Like the chest is important. If the chest isn't that important, just let them in, you know? So I even thought about like having the old system of Morrowind where you just kind of, you know, spend some time. And I like the idea of not like a mini game, but like you spend the time because then guards could be coming. So you're spending time, but a guard is coming around the door and now you have to run off again before the guard comes. But the Deus Ex approach. Yeah, but ultimately, the Deus Ex approach I think is great. Even though it looks a little silly when you just have the multi-tool and you're just doing this with it. But it's like, but just having a little bar or something go to completion, I think is great. But then I just thought again, it just gets rid of all the narrative weight to this. It's like it has a stealth position, and if the game was more of a stealth game, then that would be great because it's just basically mitigating your stealth factor. But as a story game, it doesn't add anything to the story. So those were my thoughts on like locks, is that I decided to just remove lock picking. And I'm still trying to figure out if you can pick someone's pocket of things they're not wearing, or you can only like what you could pick out of someone's pocket. Like I'm not really sure about that. Like I want to have pickpocketing, but no lock picking. So you have a reason to stealth up behind someone besides like a stealth kill. But I don't know what you can get out of there. Like, and I actually don't know what you can put in there yet either. Cause like, can you put cabinets in there? Like if you buy a cabinet and you want to put it in your house, does it have to teleport to your house, or do you put it in your pocket and then carry it to your house? So I'm not really sure about some of those questions. So we'll see how they come in after the demo. Probably I'll put the demo out and solve those issues later.
One thing I learned with the demo is if you let the player, because I disabled weight restrictions in the demo, because we didn't have it ready for balancing, and we kind of went their approach of let's give the player everything. Yeah. So we really boosted how fast the player just progresses with, like, you know, how much XP takes to level up. So it's faster to level up, and we boosted how many items we give the player, and that didn't really work. It kind of ruined it. So first off, players just have a bajillion items. So they have, like, when you have a bajillion items, you need really good inventory management systems, like a ton of UI, things that we just didn't have. You know, we don't have search bars, tagging, we didn't even have a working categorizing, like, ordering system, like a table. We have that now, but and yeah, that just didn't work. And when you give players a bajillion items, players it kind of just all blends together, and then players are like, I don't really care anymore.
Right.
So, and that's like, okay, so we scaled it down a bit in a recent patch of the demo, but it's always going to be a problem just because it's not balanced.
Yeah. So that is definitely a problem. One thing that I'm thinking about for that is that I have like 2 inventories, and one is like your sell inventory and one is your normal inventory, your keep inventory. And so when you pick things up, you can tag them for sale. Like, you can just use a different button and pick them up. And then that way, you don't care about this item. You're just getting it to sell it. So for all the junk, you can just run around and grab that. And then when you go to get rid of it, then it doesn't matter, right? Because you didn't want it in the first place. So there's a little bit of sorting there, but yeah, I do think it's going to be a problem. I had that problem even in Skyrim, right? So Skyrim has a weight limit and it works pretty well, but yeah, I still had hundreds and hundreds of items that were way too long. And so you have categories, but you're still scrolling and scrolling and scrolling down these categories.
You can see like 6 items at once, which is terrible. The UI
I should fix that in mine. You can see 9 items at once in mine. I think Skyrim, you had more I think probably it was like 15 or something, but
not many.
Was it? Yeah.
It wasn't many.
It wasn't many. I have 9 and maybe I could have 10. So with my current font size. So I'll have to figure that out once that comes about. So I'm not sure how to deal with that. We'll see. The stacking does help, of course. Like you don't have 100 arrows, they're all stacked on each other.
Oh, totally.
But you are going to have lots of unique items that don't stack. And then I can have categories for like, the different like weapons, armor, food, etc. So you can kind of separate things that way. And then a couple sorting options for like heaviest, lightest, cost, stuff like that. So there's some ways to make that a little easier. I'm basically going off the New Vegas model as well. Like I liked how they did their sorting mechanism, and I'm doing my game. Like I like playing with the gamepad, so I'm trying to make everything work from the gamepad first and not just from keyboard and mouse. Now I've got both, but well, I don't know, because it's launching on PC, so and a lot of PC players don't use gamepad. They like the mouse and keyboard. So I don't know if it's really smart to not really customize what you want to do for their first platform to like maximize that platform. It's like maximize the largest base in that platform with the input devices they like, rather than this is a little more selfish. Like I'm on a PC, but I'm doing a gamepad game. So that does influence the UI in a negative way for the mouse users, right? Because if I made it like only work for the mouse, I probably would have done something different where there was a lot more filtering features, but I can still put that stuff in. I can have the filter bar and drop downs and stuff. So I think just adding like a filter text might be good enough where they can start to type ahead, and the type ahead just like filters everything out. So like a little
one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I've realized that helps is instead of ordering alphabetically initially, instead ordering by type. So like, and not just like type like weapon, like, weapon versus armor, but instead like, you have the weapon category. So you see all the daggers first, and then you see all the swords, and then, and that could be ordered type alphabetically, right? Like sword is S. So like, but ordering it by type means that you can the player knows what they want. They want a dagger versus a sword versus a greatsword. So they just quickly scroll through, and if you have icons, it's even better because then they can just instantly see. And then, once you're in the dagger area, it's basically sort by type and then alphabetical.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. So it'd be like if all the names were dagger of might, dagger of ice, dagger of whatever, and sword of, might, sword of fire, whatever.
And it doesn't have to be, the names don't have to be like that.
Yeah, I'm just saying if they were all like that, then it would sort.
That's how it would look.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that would be boring and annoying if that's.
I tried that. I tried that, and no.
Yeah, too much repetition.
Sword of iron.
Yeah,
sword of iron. That just sounds terrible. So yeah.
Yeah, not the right way to go. Not everyone wants to be Yoda all the time.
Exactly. Yeah, and I realized there's a little more complexity with my item system because I also have stacking, and when I mentioned the instancing thing, but when I save, I do save just since I have stacks. I just save the one item and just say how many quantity.
Mm-hmm.
So once it saves, it does not have all the instances, just as each stack saves. And what I know I could do, but just haven't gone to is, when you add an item and the stack already exists, you could destroy that instance now and just add to account. I just haven't done it because it doesn't need it yet. I'm just like, but yeah, items can also, the only reason I have the instance system at all is because of like weapons like swords and armor, where a sword can have a unique, there's like ranges of damage that a weapon can have.
Mm-hmm.
So, you pick up a sword and it's an iron sword. Okay. But there's like, might have 5 damage instead of 6. So I just have a seed for each item. So I just need to save the seed, and then I can, base whatever data I want, how much, whatever stats I want based on that seed.
Yeah, that's a good approach. I like the seed approach. It's you can just randomize it till you get what you want, and then use that.
Yeah. So like, so an inventory, just randomize a bunch of items. It'll just have items, and each item instance will have its own seed, and that's all it needs to save. And then I can restore any information I want. And if there was one big fun thing to worry about that I've always worried about is adding content mid save. So like, the player saves the game, leaves, and then I give an update. What happens? And having to worry about that is it's always a problem, a potential problem of like, how will the game break? The seed fixes issues with like, what if I want to add a new stat that needs to regenerate? Well, it just works because it's using a seed. Easy.
Yeah, as long as the parameters don't change for any existing items, then you're set.
Yeah.
So, and I'm doing the seed method now for my like filler NPCs. Like I have like 70 normal NPCs in my town that can talk and do all kinds of stuff, but the town still feels empty. So it's like, I think I might have to add like 500 more filler people like around the town just to like make it seem like there's a couple people around, so that you're not just like in a ghost town. It's bizarre how that works. Like
it is crazy how it works, but
but it's necessary. So I'm doing that same thing now, where I just give like a character a UUID, and that's also their seed, and then that determines like their properties for their skin color and clothes colors and stuff like that. So I don't have to worry about that, but I can do some adjustment if I want to like just move the seed around a little bit. I can try to get it right and then not worry about it. But yeah, the loading on new content is that's a big one, because you could have topology change, and like now they're inside a tree or something like that. And where do you put them? Do you just try to move them outside the tree, but now they're like on a table and they're knocking things over? It's like, or whatever's going on. It's like there's just like a cascading effect of like things have changed and like the state isn't the same anymore. Like what's your first approach to that now?
Right now I don't have an approach, but my plan is basically teleport them to a navmesh point.
Okay.
Since navmesh usually means it's valid,
right?
Because an NPC can go there, that generally means it's valid. That's probably good enough. That's probably the best I will try to do, most likely.
And then you don't have any like abandoned navmesh areas where like there's like an area that's you can't really go.
That could happen. Yeah. That could definitely happen. One option could be to like find a navmesh point that is like, find the nearest door, and then find a navmesh point that can be pathed to that door.
Right. If you pick 2 points,
like that. Find a valid thing. Find a valid thing, and then find the nearest location that can path to that valid thing.
Right.
That's I just invented that, but that could be a possible solution.
Yeah, I think that works well. Like that, as long as you have 2 points and you can path between them, then you're not like inside a tree. And just happen to have navmesh inside the tree.
Right, exactly. That's happened. I've had NPCs spawn inside of trees. Yeah, that's annoying.
Yeah, like I've had problems with people falling through the floor a bunch of times, where there's just like some problem with the ground detection or something, and then they fall through the floor, and then that's been tricky. Like I've got a couple different pieces of code now that just look at like you're falling for a long time, or like you're trying to move, but you haven't been able to move. Like I'm trying to fix that so that if you move for a little bit, you'll still try to move, but not animate. Like I haven't quite done that yet, where the animation follows the movement versus like you animate and I'm just like using the locomotion values to like move you over there. but like if you're walking and like you're just running into something, that looks awful. But it's hard to stop because like they're conjoined together, right? The locomotion is what's moving.
Right.
I'm getting it from the animation. So if you're not animating, I'm not getting you the thing that would move you out of the way. So it's a little tricky, but like detecting like, okay, well, I'm moving and like it should be going this far, but it's not. So after a certain period of time, then I just teleport you someplace else, you know? So it's that's a tricky one, getting all those corner cases. I wrote a little GitHub program off of the logic that I did that I put up a couple, I don't know, months ago of just like how I fixed it in Unity, just like testing for falling, testing for like not moving, testing for, you know, inside an object or something like that. But it's like, it's just like you just always have to look to see if things are broken because for whatever reason, it's just hard to get that feedback in the game sometimes.
Yeah. And NPCs falling through stuff has also been a problem every once in a while. And I have a solution where if an NPC falls to a certain, you know, Y position, they'll just be teleported back to the last time they were valid.
Right.
And then I throw an error, so it shows up, so it tells me. I'm like, oh, like that. It's amazing when just because like stuff can just happen, like weird stuff. It's a world, so you know I'm testing the game, doing something, and just weird stuff happens. So like logging that is awesome.
Right.
Because then I'll just know, and I might like find a potential bug. You know, I'm just testing this one thing, and all of a sudden, NPC fell through the world. I'm like, all right, time to figure out why that happened.
Right. Like you spawned out the ground or something, and he's still there and just falls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've had that. Yeah, things.
So, how do you handle like your navigation stuff? Like, how did you go about like determining whether you'd have like compasses or maps or map markers or custom map markers? Like, how do you approach that?
So my initial design was more like Morrowind, and you can see that a lot in the demo where, you know, you have a fog of war map. The map is generated by basically taking a picture of every cell in editor, and then I stitch it together in a big image. And it's smart where if I can update certain cells and it'll just, you know, stitch together. It also slices the image because the image is gigantic. So, you know, it's a bunch of images. I have a fog of war, basically just tracked by having a bunch of cell, you know, basically subcells, and then it knows whether I've gone there. And at first I just had that. And in the demo, you don't have quest markers on the map, but in the current version of, you know, early access, what we're working on does have quest markers. In the demo, you have like the map markers on your screen, which we've basically completely removed now. You only see those if you're like right next to an object, because they're bad. You know, it just tells you go off in this direction. You're staring at the map marker and running. It sucks. Right. So instead, we only use those map markers if you're like, get this item in this dungeon, and you're right next to the item. Then it'll tell you where it is. I have PTSD from Morrowind when I had to go find the Dwemer puzzle box.
Yes, of course.
And I spent forever, and it was just right on the shelf, right at the beginning. I'm like, what? So right then, that's when I decided. I'm like, I will not stand for this. So yeah, but then now we have it so they'll add a quest marker to your map. So you can always know where to go generally. There might be like a circle, kind of like in The Witcher, go in this area, go to this certain point. So you know where to go, but it's not like on your screen where you're just staring at it all the time. And then we have the compass in the bottom corner with like the mini map, which is very Morrowind. So you know the direction. People don't seem to notice that or care about that. So
the mini map or the compass?
The mini map compass thing. I think one thing I realized is, to me, what was obvious is north is up, right? Yeah. Like, why would I need to say that? But people don't get it. People don't know. It's like, okay. So I put a compass in the main map, and I'll probably put a north symbol on the mini map too. Right. So people get it. Because to me, that's very useful to be able to see like instantly whether I'm facing north, west.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But a lot of players didn't seem to get it. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's interesting what people like intuit and what they don't, because like that could have gone either way, right? Like could have been everybody just got that, or like
you don't know until you try. Yeah. Basically.
So I've decided I started with the mini map a long time ago, and then like thinking about it, I decided I wanted people to look at the world and not the mini map. So I took the mini map out, and then initially I didn't want a compass either, or I just have like a diegetic compass. So you just take a compass out and it tells you north, south, east, west. But the diegetic thing I think is like too annoying unless you really put the effort in to do it well. Like, so if you really do a good diegetic compass, okay, fine. But otherwise, it takes time, it's slow, you know. And so instead what I did now is I have a compass, but you have to like, if you stop moving for like a second and a half, the compass shows up. And then you can look around and you can see what's there. And then as soon as you start moving, it just fades away again. And so that way you can see where you're going, you can get your bearings, but you don't see it all the time. So most of the time it's gone. And if you just wait, it'll go away after like 10 seconds. So it shows up for after like a second and a half. And then after 10 seconds, it goes away again. So you're looking at like a pristine screen, even if you're looking around. It's like, I don't think you need to use the compass that long. You've either found it. And then, and I'm using compass markers. And right now I'm only using one compass marker. So your active quest. I'm still debating on whether to do the Skyrim Oblivion, like you can see multiple things around you, so you just know topics of interest. But I kind of feel like that's it takes away like being able to visually spot something. Like I can see the tower there, I know it's there. If I go into my mini map or my bigger map, I could put a marker on it, like and then I could navigate to it, and that would kind of overtake my one quest objective. So now the one compass marker would just go that way. So if there was some complexity navigating to it, like say there's a bunch of cliffs around and I have to go basically the opposite direction to get to it, like around the mountain or something, I can still use that with the tagged point in the map, but I'm not seeing anything else. So it's keeping me kind of like focused. So I don't know whether that's better or worse for a Bethesda game yet, because like one of the things with Bethesda games is fun to just run around and you have the theme park everywhere. There's, here's a bandit camp, here's a cave, here's a, whatever. So that's fun, but then it also takes away some of the narrative focus of like, I actually have a goal that I'm trying to achieve. And yeah, I can see there's a cave over there. Maybe I do want to go check it out, but I don't necessarily need the compass to prompt me to like go here, and like actively distract me from my goal. So I don't know how the players will like that or not like that but I'm thinking that's the gameplay focus, that by eschewing, having the markers available over the place, then they will look at the world more, and then they will stay a little more focused on their current task. And then because they don't have like one problem in those Bethesda games is you can have like 4 tasks all active, and that's good because now you can just find the closest one as you're moving around. Oh, I happen to be close to this guy, I'll just hop over here. But it's also a mess in that you're always seeing like all of these things swing around. So it's like, I think it's a I don't know whether it's better or worse, but I'm going for more focused, more pay attention to the world approach from the design. Like how have you kind of thought about that?
Yeah. So I've definitely gone the direction of, with, as I mentioned, with not putting a bunch of markers, in this case, physical markers on the actual screen, which is even worse than the compass markers, without a doubt.
Sure.
But yeah, Skyrim has both, right? Skyrim has the physical marker, but maybe only when you get close.
Yeah, the physical marker shows up when you're like about to get to like a cave entrance or something. It'll show you.
Right, yeah.
So that you can actually see it. If you're on top of the mountain, you can actually see the doorway through the mountain. It'll like show you the doors you're like tracking around. But I think if you're too far, it doesn't map marker it. Like maybe if you're 15 or 20 units away, you don't see it as a screen marker. But if you're close, you do.
The compass.
Yeah, you'd be on the compass, and then also on whatever map they have, the map system.
Yeah.
And it's in your discovery range, so now it's a discovered location. So
So we've canned the map marker itself, and we don't have the compass marker system. And right now I want to keep that because I don't want the player to be staring at a compass marker. Making that lined up to go straight and just it's I want the player to look at the world. And it definitely makes like level design mean more. You have to try instead of just who cares. But I think the concept of just putting a marker on your map is a pretty good balance. Morrowind of course didn't, right? Morrowind you had 100% rely on word of mouth, whatever, which is fine, but their characters don't move. That's the big one. That's the one where I really realized, yeah, there's no way. If you're told, go talk to this person, who knows where they're going to be?
Right.
You can't just rely on text documentation on that. If it's like a location, fine, but even then, it's that's much more reasonable. But yeah, tracking NPCs, yeah, right. You need a map marker somewhere. You need some sort of information. So yeah, that's why map marker on the map is the solution for me.
One thing I haven't implemented yet, but is part of the future design, is that when you ask people directions for things, they'll just physically point at where it is. So they just be like, cool. It's like over there, just like a road marker. So you can use them as kind of like mobile road markers. If they do have that location information, like I don't have my hub system is different than yours in that I kind of went every dialogue option you get once and then they don't repeat. And so like you already heard it. And then what I do instead is I give you a journal. And so the journal has everything you ever talked about with that person kind of logged in. So if you look at somebody,
like
just press, pardon?
Daggerfall, I think, had the log.
Maybe. They might have had that. I don't remember.
Log.
It's been too long now if I remember they have. I think they did have that though. But yeah, that's what it is. It's essentially a chat log, and you can either see it for everything, and then you can also see it for this specific character, and you can do it in dialogue or out of dialogue. So if I'm just out of dialogue walking by, I can just tag someone with that and bring up what we talked about in the past. And then I can also navigate to it in the menu system. So I can navigate, if I know the character's name, I can navigate to the menu system and like find their log. And then if I'm talking to them, I can hit it to like say I'm about to answer a question, but I actually don't remember what we talked about before, to like remember the context of the question. Then I can hit the journal button and go see what we talked about before to see like, okay, if I'm answering the question correctly. And I'm trying to shoot for like everything, nothing gets repeated. So like as soon as you finish something, it's gone. And so that's bad in the sense that like it's not going to repeat directions, but it's good in the sense that like things are always moving forward. So like whenever you talk to someone, you're only seeing like current context, and if you already covered that context, like you don't have anything else to talk about now until something new comes up, so so it gives you a little bit of saving time on that, and then still being able to get it. I don't know again how people will react to that versus like, because New Vegas didn't do that, and I think their system worked really well, but they also had a very constrained system in terms of their storytelling. Like they didn't reuse the characters too many times. The characters had like a specific point in their story, and to move you through like a section, and then that character was done. And I kind of want to have characters have like a longer life, so they might be part of multiple quest lines. They might join up as a companion for a short period of time and then go off and do their own thing again. Like I kind of think of it as like I like that companion thing, and so I think is like a buddy. Like you have a buddy trip, like a buddy comedy or whatever with like a movie, and you can just have that with NPCs all the time. Like they can just join up with you and go do a thing that they care about. And this gets away from the fetch quests a little bit, where like normally with a fetch quest, like you don't care, the character cares. And so you're going to, kill the 10 wolves and then come back. But if instead you bring the character with you and like they want to kill the 10 wolves, like you're just helping them. And so they bring the concern and care with them. The meaning for the quest comes with them. And when they kill the 10 wolves, they're like, I've avenged my father. These wolves killed my father.
That's something that's actually a quest I was thinking about recently for me too, where I realized how awesome that is. The concept of going with someone where they want to do this thing and they're going to react to it. In my case, it's a character who realizes they made a mistake by feeding their urges to have to kill someone who killed their wife in this case.
Right.
They realize they shouldn't have done that. So yeah, exactly. It brings the story with them. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Something our time is running out, and I should stop after this.
Yeah.
But something I realized, and I think we have the same. So when I saw your Steam page, it does not communicate at all how deeply complicated the game is.
Yeah.
At all. Right.
Yeah.
And I think I have the same issue. And I think the problem is, the low poly graphics, right? We have the same issue where you see the graphics, you're like, oh, okay, this is like a simple game. And I think it's obvious that that's not the case. Just something I realized. And I think one thing, and that's a thing. How do you communicate that? right? Like how do you communicate the depth of systems in screenshots and a video when you have the simple graphics? I think showing UI is an obvious one, but yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on like how that could be done.
Yeah, I'm torn because I also am trying not to oversell the game because one, the demo's not out yet. So better when the demo comes out, then I can talk about more deep systems that are coming, like a roadmap.
Right.
But like, because they can see what's there now and they don't necessarily build up something in their mind that will never come.
Right.
And like one thing I don't want to do is have people feel burned. Like I don't want them to feel like betrayed because they thought it would be one thing and it's another thing.
Right.
And I don't want to oversell the game because it's very easy to be like, this game has everything, live another life, you know, it's another world.
Yeah.
And like, and no one's going to be happy with that because they all want something that doesn't exist, right? It's like, so I'm torn on that. Or and also it's like so many, like if you look at Kickstarter pages, that's all they are. They're just listing like, we're going to have this and this and this and this system and that system. And like when, you know, you're the landlord and you kick them out or charge them extra rent and then they can go to court and sue you and you can change, you know, like just all this complexity, but it never materializes or it's not fun. And so I'm torn between like talking about that complexity. That's what I thought maybe these videos could do for the people who do want to know about that. Having little snippets of design discussion can show them like, okay, there's actually a lot put into this. If they dig a little bit deeper, they can see that that's there. And I do blog posts and, you know, put those into the Steam page, but they're, you know, hard to see, you know, so it's like, so people can tell if they look, but it's not immediately visible on the store page for sure. My hope is that when I can demo it, when I have the demo, then I can just make little GIFs that just show you all the things. Like here's someone doing this, and here's someone doing this, and here's someone doing this. And I'm just literally like, you know, even if there's like 50 of them, I don't care. It's like either you wish list the page or you don't, but here's a bunch, you know, it's like, and so I just keep showing you more pieces and they can see like, okay, all these pieces are really here because I'm showing you, this is the character doing this at this time. And that's my thinking is that like show, don't tell, because telling, there's just too many people that are full of hot air, you know?
Through the screenshots, I think is the thing for me. Like, how do you communicate through the screenshots? Because the screenshots, what you're showing is real. Because the game.
In the top bar, I don't know. Underneath the animated GIFs, I think is where to go.
True. Yeah.
Cool. Well, so, we're at 1 minute left, less than 1 minute left. So yeah, it was great talking to you.
Definitely.
If you want to catch up again at some point in the future, we could go over some more detailed stuff. But yeah, good luck on your game and good luck with your project and everything else.
Yeah, good luck on you too. Yeah, I'm going to be definitely following along. Yeah. All right.
All right.
See you.
I'm going. See ya.